Alex sat in the cold, sterile clinic, staring at the lab report trembling in his hands. His heart pounded in his chest as he struggled to process the news. HIV positive. His life had changed in a single moment, and it wasn't just the diagnosis that shattered him, it was the coldness in Judy's eyes, the way her lips curled slightly as though she had just informed him of a shameful secret, something that marked him as less than human. She spoke to him like he was contagious, like he was dirt. When Judy handed him the report, she leaned back in her chair as if afraid he'd infect her by mere proximity. "It's important you remain responsible, Alex. We don't want this to spread," she said coldly, avoiding eye contact, her voice dripping with disdain. Humiliated and broken, Alex left the clinic feeling like a walking virus. His friends slowly distanced themselves once they found out, and he couldn't shake off the heavy weight of being viewed as an outcast. Days turned into weeks, and Alex found himself in a spiraling depression. One evening, while mindlessly scrolling through his phone, he stumbled upon a video. A girl was being mocked and bullied in broad daylight. The caption read, "HIV positive freak humiliated in public." His heart stopped. In the video, a woman named Mira was cornered by a group of people who taunted her, throwing slurs and accusations her way, spitting in her direction. Some even threw trash at her while others stood by, laughing and taking videos. No one came to her defense. They treated her like a plague. Alex slammed his phone down, rage boiling inside him. "This can't go on," he muttered to himself, pacing around his small apartment. He suddenly felt empowered by his anger. He would no longer be an outcast. He would make the world understand, and they'd pay for their cruelty. That night, Alex made a decision. He was going to take control. He was going to change the rules. Alex began researching Mira. He stalked her online, figuring out her routines, and eventually approached her at a coffee shop she frequented. When he explained his plan, she looked at him with disbelief, but Alex's conviction was powerful. Soon, she joined him, realizing that in unity, they could stand against those who had ostracized them. They recruited more HIV-positive individuals who had been scorned by society, carefully building a network in the shadows. They named their group the Infestors, not just to reclaim the label society had branded them with, but to show they would no longer sit silently while being marginalized. Their plan was devious, dark, and meticulously organized. Alex was a mastermind. Mira brought charisma, winning over recruits who were ready to fight back. Together, they created a movement, a force so invisible and yet so deadly, no one saw it coming. As their numbers grew, Alex realized the key to their mission was gaining access to medical records. With help from some tech-savvy members, they broke into the hospital's records department. In the dead of night, they downloaded every health record in Newer, giving them a full blueprint of who was HIV positive and who wasn't. They began infecting people subtly, methodically. At first, it was those who had wronged them. Judy, the lab scientist, was one of the first victims. They rigged her car with a sharp needle-laden device, disguising it as a routine puncture during her morning commute. Afterward, they left no traces, but her blood results revealed everything. Slowly, she too became infected. Their methods became more sophisticated over time. Infected members were sent to work at restaurants, cafes, and even as medical staff. People who had once looked down on them were unknowingly drinking from contaminated glasses or sharing utensils that carried the virus. It wasn't about killing, it was about leveling the playing field. Within months, Newer was in a silent crisis. HIV rates were skyrocketing, and the local hospital couldn't contain the numbers. Dr. Graham, the hospital chief, panicked as patients kept testing positive for HIV at alarming rates. No one could explain the source. Desperate, Dr. Graham reached out to the Minister of Health, but the problem wasn't isolated to Newer. Other hospitals around the state were also reporting similar mysterious outbreaks. The police were brought in to investigate, but it was too late. Alex's group had already infiltrated their ranks. Several officers tested positive before they could even begin interrogating suspects. Each time the police attempted to start an investigation, their own members were struck down by the virus, leading to paranoia and internal collapse. Realizing the scope of the disaster, the government brought in a special investigations unit. This task force was kept secret, composed of elite agents, hackers, and engineers. Their objective: uncover the mastermind behind the HIV spread and neutralize the threat. But Alex had foreseen this. He and Mira were always a step ahead. They began planting false leads, setting up decoy networks, and hacking into government databases to monitor the investigators' every move. The special agents found themselves in a technological cat-and-mouse game, with each step forward met by a frustrating setback. The government issued gag orders on media outlets, keeping the outbreak under wraps. Journalists who tried to investigate were silenced. Fear spread through the population, but no one knew why. As the task force closed in, tensions within the infestors began to rise. Mira, once confident in Alex's leadership, started questioning their endgame. What happens when we've infected everyone, Alex? What then? She asked one night, the glow of their screens lighting the room. We're not just infecting people, Alex replied, his eyes gleaming with determination. We're showing them that we're the same. We all bleed the same blood, Mira. This virus doesn't discriminate. Once they understand that, the world will change. But Mira wasn't convinced anymore. She had seen the fear in people's eyes, the chaos they had unleashed, and it wasn't bringing the equality she had hoped for. People were terrified, but not of HIV, they were terrified of each other. As the Special Investigations Unit finally tracked down Alex's hideout, they mobilized for a final strike. The night sky over Newark was filled with helicopters, and the streets were swarming with heavily armed agents. But Alex had prepared for this. Hidden in the shadows of the city, the infestors had rigged key locations with devices that could expose even more people to the virus if the government dared to move against them. As agents stormed their headquarters, Alex watched from a hidden surveillance room. This isn't the end, he whispered to Mira. This is just the beginning. With the push of a button, he set the final phase of their plan in motion, triggering a chain of events that would forever alter the course of Newark's history. The battle for control, identity, and survival had just begun.
To be continued.